So my good friend from the last real job I had got these pink ARTNOME headbands as a joke because I was growing my hair out. He didn't think I would wear them, and I wore them every single day, and people started asking for them. They wanted to buy them off my head or whatever. So when I started my company, we decided to do Club NFT headbands for NFT NYC, and it became like the thing that everybody at NFT YC was going after. They're just like, do you have any more? I have to get one. So we're like, well, we'll do it again in Miami. We'll do pink. And then we did purple in Austin. So now it's yellow in LA. And some people actually have, a few people I think actually have one of each of them. So they've actually gone to all the different events. And yeah, it's cool. People get like competitive about it, or like there's certain ones that they want, and it works great for advertising. I mean, that's, it's good for us. Yeah. So I'm Jason Bailey. A lot of people know me as ARTNOME. I was a really early collector in the NFT space, so wrote this article in 2017 called "The Blockchain Art Market is Here," because I saw so much potential in the blockchain to solve a lot of the problems in the traditional art world, and gobbled up a lot of the early artworks by the artists, not because I ever thought they'd be worth money, but because as a failed artist, I was really excited about the opportunity to build a new system. And at the time, there weren't a lot of people actually willing to support or buy into these early NFTs. So I felt like somebody had to pour the gasoline into the engine to show that the system could potentially work. Fast forward a few years, and now a lot of those early NFTs are worth a lot of money, but I still collect mostly at a low level to support the artists that are less known. So the artists that are already really popular, they don't need my support, right? My goal is always to try to find the artists that are maybe undiscovered and try to throw my weight and support behind them. Yeah, so Club NFT is actually my company. What happened is in 2021, when NFTs took off, a lot of venture capitalists were like, Jason, you're a startup guy. You've been in the space a long time. We want to give you money to start a marketplace. And I said, well, we don't really need another marketplaces. There's like marketplaces all over the place. But what we do need to solve are some of these core infrastructure problems that have been around since the beginnings of NFTs, before we even called them NFTs. So for one thing, when marketplaces go out of business, they're typically the ones that actually pay to store the image off-chain. Very rarely is the art ever on-chain. So people buy these NFTs thinking the art's on-chain, when in reality it's not. If you're lucky, it's on something called IPFS. But the marketplace is paying to store that there. So when they go out of business, your NFT breaks and the image goes away. So one of the problems that we're trying to solve right now is to give people a free solution to download all their off-chain assets in the exact format that they would need them in to bring them back up to IPFS, so that they're not dependent on the marketplace or the artist or anyone else. So it's a true, or even us, so it's a true Web3 solution. So in early 2021, there was an artist who wrote sort of a scathing paper about the impact of NFTs on the environment. And it was important that he wrote that paper and that people like paid attention, but pretty quickly it devolved into sort of a fight where there were these artists that were making NFTs to feed their families, and there were these environmentalists that were saying like, you're horrible people. It actually got to the point where there's some death threats and things like that. And I could see that it wasn't actually progressing or moving forward at all. So one day, having friends on both sides, I put out a tweet that said, hey, if I put out a little bit of money and a lot of time to try to actually build a fund to try to solve some of these problems and take some of this human energy and put it towards a solution, would people be into that? And to my surprise, people from all sides were immediately like, yes, like, that's a good direction forward. So within a month or so, we had about $100,000 in donations, as well as 50 teams that were really interested in trying to figure out either how to change the process in the code to make it more efficient, or to write up sort of documents or information that helped artists understand maybe some marketplaces are more efficient or less efficient. So really we just tried to turn around this whole thing from really a go-nowhere attack to a way for people to use some of that human energy to try to find a way to make things more efficient. Yeah, so I sometimes refer to myself as a failed artist. All I ever wanted to be was an artist growing up, and I went to school for like sculpture and printmaking and painting in the late '90s. And when I graduated, like a lot of artists, I realized there just weren't a lot of opportunities out there to make a living making art. So I kind of gave up and went into the tech space, then went back nights because I missed it and got an MFA more around digital art. And did a lot of generative art, which is kind of caught on now, but this is art that uses sort of like computer code. But again, didn't really see an audience for it or sort of a method to sort of monetarily get any rewards. And I had to put my time into work to sort of take care of my family and pay for my mortgage. So part of what drove me to really want to play a role in exploring NFTs as a new potential competitor or a new economy for artists that was maybe more equitable. I'm getting older, and I realize maybe my ship has sailed, and I'm not going to have the opportunity to do the one thing I wanted to do in life, which is to become an artist. But maybe now that I've got some means and I'm a bit older, I can actually use my energy to try to make it better for the younger artists, right? So that we can at least experiment. Maybe the experiment will go wrong, and maybe it won't be any better than the old art world. But that old art world, I mean, I went to art school for a quarter of my life, and no one I went to school with, hundreds or thousands of artists that I know, none of them were being served by that old system. So I just felt like there was something fundamentally wrong, and we had to at least try to experiment. We owed it to them to try to experiment and see if we could come up with something better. Yeah, I mean, it's actually somewhat selfish. Like, art has always been the best part of my life, my entire life. And when I wake up tomorrow and there's more great art to look at, my life is better, right? But the old system didn't really support artists in a way that was necessarily happening the way that I thought it could or should. So in a way, a lot of my effort and time that I put into this space is driven by my goal or desire to live a life where there's more art and more people can participate, because that's what makes me happy, So even today, coming out for this presentation, I thought, well, the space has become so commercialized. Does it really make sense for me to participate in these things anymore? It's not necessarily what I was trying to make it 3 or 4 years ago. But when I meet people that are benefiting from this new system that had no shot at all in the old traditional art world, it becomes emotional for me. And it's really, it's a emotion-driven thing. I don't have to work in this space. I don't have to spend my time, doing these things. But the reason I do it is because I really want to see these artists succeed for their sake and for my sake. So that's really what drives me and motivates me. So, in 2021, NFTs got so popular that people were just throwing together events all over the place. Like, I would argue most of the events that I've been to were like poorly put together, just kind of slapped together. There was one event that I'll remain nameless that had 600 speakers. When you have 600 speakers, nobody's even listening anymore, right? So when you have an event like NFT in America, where there's a carefully curated, mix of presenters that I respect and admire and would want to come and listen to, and it's the whole sort of event is just done with rigor, top to bottom, so that it really respects NFT artists and what they're trying to do. It was a no-brainer for me. So the people involved really is what signaled to me that this was going to be an event that took these artists seriously and gave them the respect that and the platform that they needed to share their message, not just another cattle call where they're trying to capitalize on this, recent trend and usher in anyone that has a pulse. So I've been really happy with the quality of the entire event. And the way that the staff have sort of handled communications and setting this up. And I think it's a template for the way NFT events should work moving forward. Yeah, I mean, I think people talk a lot about bubbles in the crypto space, and they say, "Oh, it's like a Boolean? Is the bubble going to pop and NFTs will die, or is the bubble, going to keep growing?" I've always described it as a bubble gun, like one of those toys where the bubbles just get increasingly bigger. So we'll see the bubble pop. I think we need the bubble to pop right now, actually, because there was so much hype last year, and the space grew so fast that it lost some of its core values. So I think we'll see a pop in 2022. But all that does is it shakes off all the people that really came in only for the money and didn't really have any interest. And the people that are here to build and to make art will actually be able to slow down and make better work and actually kind of double down on their interest in trying to grow the space. So It's funny when I talk about how I kind of hope that the bubble pops, people are like, wait, you're nuts. Like, you own all these NFTs that you're invested in, and you run a company based on NFTs, and you're rooting for the bubble to pop. But I actually think it's a natural part of the life cycle. And when it gets so noisy that there's just like ridiculous things happening, we kind of need a bubble to pop to get rid of all the noise so that the signal, the people that are actually working hard and care about this space, can take the time to build it so that it can scale again in the next bubble. Yeah, so ARTNOME is my personal like brand and art and tech blog, and it did really well and continues to be a spot where I can put out, part of the reason it did so well is because I'm kind of aggressive in my opinions. A lot of these publications need to go through editorial and get approval and this, that, and the other. But I made some pretty wild, predictions going back to like 2017 when I said that the NFTs would explode and, some other things that I wrote about that seemed pretty radical at the time that have become sort of normalized, over time. So I still have ARTNOME as my spot for sort of my crazy ideas when I don't want to have to get anyone's approval. But I also realize that there's only so much that I can do as one person nights and weekends with a blog. So my company has recently launched rightclicksave.com, which is, in my mind, it's like ARTNOME on steroids, right? So we have an entire staff of brilliant people from all around the world who can write at a level that actually surpasses ARTNOME, in my opinion. And instead of getting just my opinion, which is very biased, it's going to be from me, we actually intentionally surface a plurality of voices. So in any given week, you might see 2 or 3 articles where the authors vehemently disagree with each other, and we think that's what's needed, right? Otherwise, you end up with an echo chamber. So much of the NFT space is like, NFTs are horrible, or NFTs are going to save the day and are perfect. But the reality is probably somewhere in a dialogue in the middle, and we're really eager to sort of surface and foster that dialogue. So pretty regularly on Right Click Save, we're featuring articles where people are saying things that I strongly disagree with. But I think that platform needs to exist in NFTs. And honestly, I think we're missing that kind of platform in sort of the news in general anymore. As people get more and more polarized, we get further and further away from having a spot where you can actually surface multiple voices, which I